Thank everyone for being here, understanding your reactive dog behavior. Hopefully everyone received the workbook. So whether you printed it out or you're viewing it online, definitely you can take notes and fill everything in later, but it'll all come together at the end. So again, welcome to understanding your reactive dog's behavior. Before we get started, um, those who are here, if you can just put in the chat where you're located, city and state, and how old is your dog? And so I'll give you a minute to do that. And let me make sure I can see it. Arlington, Virginia, and Finn is 5. Welcome, Jane. Welcome, welcome. And then, everyone else can just put their where they're from and their dog's Attleboro, 2 years old and 5 months. Okay. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking this in a second, once I get into everything. Okay, Attleboro, my dogs are 2 years and 5 months and 2 years and 10 months. Perfect. Okay. So understanding your reactive dog's behavior. The reason why I wanted to teach this workshop, one, because it's like the top calls I get for issues that are going on with people's dogs. But the other thing is helping you understand that there are more tools than teaching your dog skills. We want to start looking at the emotional aspect and the environment and things like that, because oftentimes, whether we have time to train, whether we can't afford training, whatever it may be, there's other things that you can do until you can get to the place where either you're calling in a trainer or if this works for you, great. But there's other things. So I just want to walk everyone through what may look like for your dog. And as we go through this workbook and I talk a little bit, just remember that your dog's going to be different from everyone else's dog. Sometimes we have a bad habit of comparing our dogs. So just know that as you work through this, just think about your dog only, not your neighbors or things like that. So before we get started, if you want to go to slide number 1 before we start, and you can fill in your dog's name, and just tell me what behavior feels hardest for you right now. Is it your dog reacting on walks when another dog appears around people? So in a workbook, you can check off all those. If you want in the chat, the more information I know, the better. One thing I pride myself in is kind of tailoring things that I'm talking about to the people that are here in the workshop. So if you want to, you can throw in the chat what you feel is the hardest right now. And so once you have that down, the next question is, how do I usually feel about that moment? And this is only you, not anyone else in the home. Are you worried, embarrassed, frustrated, overwhelmed, confused? And the last thing is one thing you hope to understand today. And if you guys want to put any questions that we're going over, if you want to put that in the chat, phenomenal. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to answer that in your workbook. Okay. And so we have Valerie in Norwood. Nugget is 3. Okay. People walking by, that's a common one. Other dogs, common. Neighbors, bikes, motors, all these are very, very common. I always tell my families, you're definitely not alone. Okay. So going back to what you filled in about the hardest thing right now, just what I mentioned, you're not alone. On walks is a pretty common place for dogs to react. When other dogs appear, people, houses, maybe your dog has some specialty they react towards, but all these are pretty normal. What I talk to families about a lot of times when our dogs are having issues, we're like, oh my God, my dog's reacting. We need to call in a trainer to work on loose leash walking or whatever the thought is or whatever you saw that you think your dog needs. But from my years of training, what I found is that a lot of our dog's reactions has a lot to do with how we are doing emotionally. And if we're all worked up before our dog reacts, or if we already have, something in our mind that something's going to happen, our dog feels that and it goes right down a leash. So part of today is helping you understand your own emotions and how it relates to your dog's behavior and what can we do about that. So just keep that in mind as well. So if you want to move on to the shift, slide 2 in the workbook, your dog may not be giving you a hard time. They just maybe having a hard time. And so that goes right back to when we go out on walks and things like that. A lot of times we look at what our dog is doing in that moment, but instead, I challenge you to take a step back and say to yourself, what is it that my dog needs or what is going on in that moment? I always tell people if you're not a trainer, so I don't expect you to give me the exact answer, but I only say this to let you know that there's always a cause why your dogs react, and dogs do not react just because or out of nowhere. There's always a reason. So that's why I always say your dog may not be giving you a hard time, they're just having a hard time. Okay. So slide number 3 in your workbook, you're probably saying to yourself, walk shouldn't feel this hard. And you're right. They shouldn't be that hard. And I'm just gonna ask you, you can put it in the chat. Jane, I was just gonna ask that. So the next question is, when you are set up to go somewhere where you know your dog's gonna react, whether it's, seeing a neighbor or on a walk, what is it that you naturally do? It's just like autopilot. Are you scanning ahead? Are you changing directions? Worried about the dog? Like, what is it that you worry about most when it comes to your dog reacting? And if you want to throw some of those in the chat, that would be great too, so we can talk about it. You guys are okay. Scanning ahead to make sure I can keep space between another dog and us. We'll chat about that. That's definitely a good skill to have. Okay. Oh, welcome back, Marcella. OG, how's Maisie? Mostly, okay, when she sees people that come to the house jumping on them and not being able to settle. Okay. Yep. All these. Yep. He pulls, barks like crazy when he sees another dog, unless it's a dog he already knows. Yes. I can go so many different directions with this, but I'm going to stay the course tonight. So these are all, like, again, you're not alone. These are pretty common. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So, just like I was saying earlier, behavior is communication. And again, you're probably thinking, how do I stop this? Instead, I challenge you to think, what is my dog trying to tell me? Okay. So I always say success starts before the walk. If you're going on a walk with your dog or wherever you're doing, that's going to cause your dog to react. Maybe someone's coming over. We don't want to start in a moment when it happens. We definitely want to start before the walk. So in this scenario context that we're doing in this workshop, we're just talking about going on a walk because that's usually the common one that people call about. So what I would ask you if I was working with you and your dog, how are you feeling right now? So right now it's 7 o'clock. We're going on a walk, right? Some people walk their dogs in the evening. So just put in the chat, how are you feeling before you go out on the walk? Are you calm? Do you feel rushed? Are you going to work? So drop that in the chat, how you feel before you're going out, and what do you notice about yourself? It doesn't have to be, the things on the worksheet. If you notice something different, you can put that in there too. So I'll give you a second to think about that. Gold Molly says, my dog is definitely scared. Okay. And so one thing I would just to harp on that for a second, one thing I would ask you is, what is your dog afraid of? A lot of time is like, I don't know. But as I walk you through this, I always say you want to look at the environment. Was your dog scared before he left the house? Was your dog scared when he heard a car walk by? Was he scared when he got to a certain location? And so in order for a trainer like myself, of course I can come in and, figure things out. But a lot of this is helping you to understand how to work this out on your own. You want to determine what is it, when did your dog get scared? And that will be your starting point to start to work on some things. So DS Winner said, usually calm. Yep. I usually feel calm overall, but I'm also wondering if we'll have a walk without stress. Absolutely, absolutely. That's a common one. And the other thing I'm going to challenge you to think, instead of thinking, am I going to have a good walk? Rightfully so, to think that you want to say, can we succeed today? What do we need to change? A lot of times we go out on our walks, right? And say we have a horrible walk. We're just focused on getting home and relaxing. We don't want to think about how can we change it. But I challenge you to think, okay, I was on this walk. My dog reacted when I went by that fence. What can we do next time to make it better? Is it going another direction? Is it, my dog barked, reacted when they saw a car? Is it going out when there's less cars out? So you always want to think, what can we do better the next time? Because doing the same thing over and over, it doesn't get better. It just stays the same. So even if it's a small change, which we'll talk about some of those things, you want to start to think about that. All right. Calm before commands. You'll always hear me say that. As I said, everything starts before you leave the house. And as you notice, we haven't even left the house for the walk, because I always say, if your dog is acting crazy or hyper before the walk, they're not going to be any better on a walk. Some dogs do calm down by the end, but how about we have a good walk at the beginning? So, if you want to put in a chat, usually what is it that your dog is doing before the walk, or how is your dog behaving right before the walk? Like when you're starting to get this stuff right, is your dog calm? Are they berserkers? What's going on? And I'll give you guys a second to put that in the chat. He's so excited. He's going for a walk. It's hard. Exactly. Exactly. And you're probably already thinking to yourself, this is going to be a doozy, right? So one thing I encourage the families that I work with is, if your dog is crazy before the walk, let's start to work on calming them down. Sniffing is always going to be my number one go-to. Sniffing is very exhausting. If I was to ask you to do 100 sniffles right now, back to back, you'll be pretty tired at the end. And so I always like to let dogs sniff. One of my favorite things to do is the Parmesan cheese hack, which everyone loves. If you have the grated Parmesan cheese, it's pretty stinky. You can sprinkle that in the grass, toss some treats in there, and let your dog sniff before the walk, because that's going to help them decompress, so they can start off calmly. If we were just to put the treats in there alone, they probably would search for the treats and be like, I'm ready. But the Parmesan, with it being stinky, they'll continue to sniff and search around. And the goal isn't for them to get all the treats. The goal is just for them to relax. And so for each dog is going to be different. Maybe your dog isn't a sniffer and they like to do something else. Maybe chewing calms them down. So what I want you to do on the worksheet, you want to write down, when does your dog seem calm? Is it anything that your dog does that calms them down that you know of? Whether it can be anywhere from something that calms them for 5 seconds to like 30 minutes. And if you want to put that in the chat. Yep, Woot is a big sniffer. Is there such thing as no, there's never enough as too much sniffing. And they'll let you know, because they'll sniff and they'll lie down and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I might have forgot something. Let me get up and sniff again. And they'll just go back to it. And it gives a lot of structure in the backyard if your dog gets in trouble back there. Okay. So if you guys don't have anything or you're not quite sure, again, that's the easy hack, the Parmesan cheese hack, because usually it's in your cupboard. Food scatter, a food search. So a lot of times we can't get outside, especially in New England. It's been too hot or either it's been too rainy. So just taking a handful of treats and tossing it on the ground and just letting them do like a little search hunt, that'll do the same thing. Or putting it inside a basket with stuffed toys and letting them do like a bobbin for apple thing. That will help as well. So as we're talking about calming them before the walk, you may not think of it right now, but after this workshop's over, I want you to start thinking about, what is it that you can do before the walk, before you start getting leashes and things that you can give them to help relax them. If I can crouch down and rub his ear, less reactive. Exactly. So crouching down and rubbing the ear, that's one that that works for your dog. And just like I said in the beginning, different things are going to work for different dogs. And if you find something that you do that you kind of find that is particular, then do it, as long as it gets your dog to calm down. I just can't live my life at his level. He's medium, 25 pound. I know. I have a 25-pound Frenchie. I get it. I get it. Okay. So the other thing we want to talk about before the walk is starting to notice what time of day you're going on a walk, and when is your dog having a hard time. So before you go on a walk, say we're going right now at 7 o'clock, do you know that your dog's going to have a hard time, and what are they usually having a hard time with? So can someone put that in the chat? If we were to go for a walk right now at 7 p.m. in your neighborhood, what would your dog have a hard time with? Because you want to start to think about the environment and what's going to be going on during the walk as well. Yes, the dog walkers are out. I'm out mid-morning walking those dogs and training them. You're absolutely right. And, so Jane, now that you know that, so for instance, I don't remember Jane, but if you know that your dog reacts to all the dogs being out, then I would say, okay, the dog walkers, I see them out between 10 and 12. I'm going to walk my dog at before 10 or after 12. So you don't want to go out at that time if your dog doesn't know how to respond, especially if they haven't had training or you haven't had these tools yet. And you want to try to minimize all the reactivity that may go on. So sometimes it means walking at a different time. So now we're on the walk. Hopefully your dog's nice and calm. One of the things I tell folks is if your dog, they still may be a little bit more excitable on a walk, but at least we tried to calm them down. On the walk, you definitely want to bring treats with you. Something that you can do that's pretty easy. I always say before any type of training skill, whether it's on a walk, you're teaching your dog to sit. I love working with a dog on focusing. What that means is if I call your name, I want you to look at me. And I know some of you probably like, my dog doesn't really come when called, but we have to remember this is something new we're teaching our dog. If we make a habit of it, they'll start to just, turn and look at you. So what that means is you bring out some treats and you just call your dog's name randomly and you just give them a treat. The reason why we work on focus first, because with a reactive dog, there's gonna be times where we see a dog come in or see something coming that they're gonna react with, and we wanna call their name and get them to come with us. And a lot of time, if they're not gonna focus on us, then we have like a tug of war thing going on. So oftentimes I will bring out a little Chex Mix bag full of treats. And if you're saying my dog doesn't is not treat motivated, you can use anything that motivates your dog. I remember one time a dog definitely was not treat motivated, but he loved balls. And so I just carried a ball by in my little pouch. And anytime I called his name, I called him and then I would like give him the ball and let it wiggle a little bit, then take it back. So you have to be creative. Another thing with the small dogs, because the back pain and the back issues can be a lot, you can definitely use a back scratcher or a long spoon, put a little peanut butter or yogurt on it, and do one of these numbers as you're walking if you're worried about leaning over and stuff. Because I have a small dog too, so I get it. But definitely teaching them to focus on you on the walks. One, if your dog's a puller, you'll start to realize that they're not pulling as much because they're going to start coming back to you for good things. The second thing you're going to start to realize is that when you need to call your dog to you to like maybe move to the other side of the sidewalk or move away because you don't want them to react, they'll start to come with you more easily because you're giving them something good. So definitely remember that on a walk. Um, the slide here says, it's okay to go home. Going home isn't failing. Sometimes it protects tomorrow's walk. Absolutely. There's certain scenarios with the families I work with I could think of, especially with the younger dogs where they really don't know the world yet, so they freeze on walks and they don't want to go. And a lot of times, we're like, come on, let's go. I always say go home because the number one thing you're doing with your dog is you're building trust. That you're not going to force them into that scary situation. And also, it keeps your sanity as well. And one time I was working with this client and she was like, but my dog only walks to the end of the sidewalk. I said, well, guess what? You're only walking to the end of the sidewalk then because you're building trust. And then the next week, she was walking all the way around. So I always say, if you get to a point in a walk where you're like, I don't know if I can handle my dog walking past this dog or whatever they're triggered towards, just turn around and go home because you're building confidence with yourself as well as your dog. So just keep that in mind. Every environment changes the conversation. Exactly. So a lot of times I will hear that my dog is good inside, but outside, not so much. And you may leave this workshop being like, Pam, I tried this in my neighborhood. My dog was fine. But then I went to, downtown and my dog was awful. Environment affects everything. The easiest way to put it, which I talk to give me a second, let me just which I talk to the families about is, you have to practice everywhere in order for your dog to do that same behavior everywhere. It's not good enough just to practice in a neighborhood. So say we're doing those focus exercises in a neighborhood, but then you take your dog on a trail, you want to do the same thing so they understand what you're asking of them in those certain environments. And with reactive dogs, just going back to the environment, we have to start to acknowledge the environments in which our dog is just like they're not going to succeed, or maybe it's too challenging for them. Because a lot of times we'll be like, you know what, it's been a while, let's go back there. So one way you can start to be successful with your reactive dog and doing the focus exercise is choosing an easier environment. One of the environments that I love to go to, someone here is from Norwood, um, but I'll tell you the setup so you can kind of choose somewhere where you're located. I love Bird Park, and Bird Park is a place where there are trails, but it's like an open field in the middle. A lot of times with the reactive dogs, you have to move out the way. And if you go to an area where it's like a tight space, it's gonna be difficult. So it's like let's set ourselves up for success by going somewhere where we can move off the trail far enough where our dog's not gonna react and just watch them go by. Um, if you are on a trail, I like to know the different parts of the trail and know that, okay, well, if there's a tight spot, I know that I have to get to that spot in order for to move away. So just knowing the surroundings and things like that, and knowing what your dog needs and knowing when to move them away. So right now, can you guys want to put in the chat, the environment, what place it, what where are you walking your dog these days? Is it just the neighborhood? Is it parks, downtown? Have you stopped walking your dog completely because it's just been too challenging? So I'll give you a second to put that in the chat. One of my dogs is very nervous, alert, went outside, and isn't interested in treats or toys. Okay, I'll speak to that because that's a big one. So I'll give you guys a second. Okay, all right. Let me move aside. So I want to speak to the dogs that are too afraid. Okay. So we just oh, okay, we just moved on Friday, so we really been exploring the new yard. Is that I would suggest that if you just move, like everything's gonna be new for your dog, so just let them get used to the home and then a neighborhood first, and then going out other places. So going back to the comment of Susan's comment, she said her dog is very nervous and alert when outside and isn't interested in treats or toys, and his ears don't even move if I say his name. That tells me that your dog is a little stressed about where he is. And I know sometimes you can look around like there's nothing going on. What is my dog stressed about? But we have to remember our dogs can see better than us, hear, smell better than us. So just because we think it's calm, it may be overwhelming for your dog. So in that scenario, Susan, I would challenge you to definitely think about the places you have been where your dog isn't nervous. And I tell folks sometimes it's just sitting on your porch or just holding your dog looking out the window. And I'll speak to how to help them, like places and love places and things like that. But you definitely want to start in an area where your dog can take treats, because when they don't take treats, that just tells me that they're too overwhelmed, overstimulated, or shut down. The moment they start taking treats, that tells me they're more relaxed. So that's just a little hint right there. All right. So how to start to implement some of this stuff. The down for pause, thinking loop. When you're out on a walk, before we jump into slide 14, your next walk and choosing one thing. Definitely, we talked about seeing an environment is not a bad thing, because while my dog's like enjoying a walk, maybe sniffing, I always want to stay on a lookout to make sure, like, is there something coming along that they're going to react towards? The simplest thing, so again, noticing what is happening, understanding what my dog be experiencing in that moment. Remember, um, your dog your dog is going to react differently depending on the environment and what's going on. And so in that moment, maybe your dog's stiff, or maybe, the next move is they're going to react. So you definitely want to understand what your dog is experiencing, and based on previous experiences, um, your dog's next move. If your dog's next move is to growl, react, or lunge, or get overwhelmed, you definitely want to work on moving them further away. because distance is always going to be your friend until you get some training or you work on things. So distance will be your friend. So I'm pretty sure everyone's doing that if you're here and you have a reactive dog. But the further away you can go, the better. I like to put it this way: if you are afraid of a spider and I drop the spider in your face, you'll be pretty scared. But if you saw it from far away, you may be okay. So the further away you are from whatever's triggering your dog, usually the better your dog is because they're not as close. Um, and then you want to think again, respond, what does my dog need now? And so moving away, ideally, that would be key. All right. So let me go on to, okay. Um, I always say recovery matters more than um, your dog reacting in my dog training world because our dogs aren't going to be perfect. We have to start thinking of expectations for our dogs. If someone were to say, Pam, I want you to be perfect behavior for your whole life, because if we think about it, that's essentially what we're asking. We're like, oh my God, my dog reacted today. I thought we worked on this. And it's like, we're not giving our dog the go ahead to be imperfect. So I always say recovery matters more than perfection. What does that mean? If your dog reacts and usually it takes them like over 5 minutes to calm back down, or maybe it takes them 30 minutes, what we're looking to see is that it takes them less and less time. Maybe they react now, but it takes them 2 seconds to focus on you. And so we're always looking to make sure that is decreasing and that they respond to you quicker, or maybe they can move out the way quicker, more so than how many reactions that they're having. Okay. I promise I'll get to that one I said I was talking about. All right. Slide 14. Let me move on. Okay. This one. All right. So I always say everyone's busy. Things can be really, really overwhelming. One of the things that I specialize in dog training is making sure the training or the skills or the program that I have can last one, long after I'm gone, and two, you understand how to troubleshoot on your own. Although I'll be there for a lifetime for calls, because a lot of times we'll get training and life gets busy. Maybe we fell apart with training for like a year or two or a few months. It does not mean your dog forgot the training. You just want to get back up and start doing those techniques or the skills again. But the easiest way to start to implement some of these things, I know there's a lot of information, is you want to choose one thing at a time. So maybe tomorrow or this week, you just decide, okay, I'm usually overwhelmed for the walk. My dog is too. So maybe we're going to do the Parmesan cheese hack that Pam talked about. This week, we're just going to leave calmer. That's the only thing we're going to do. And then, that's one thing to remember. It should be okay versus, okay, let me bring treats. Okay, you don't want to do all that because then that's a setup for failure. One thing at a time. So one, you can start seeing the change in your dog, but you can also start seeing the change in yourself and start noticing how you're changing too now that you have some structure around things. Maybe you're going to choose a quieter route, or maybe you're going to create even more distance on a walk, or maybe you're going to celebrate the recoveries your dog has, or maybe you're gonna like, you know what, Pam said we can go home sooner, so I'm just going to do that. We're going to go home sooner this week. So I'm just curious in the chat, does anyone, or you guys can put in the one thing that you think you might do this week towards, your dog being calmer on walks and less reactive. What's the one thing that you'll try, or one small win that you'll look for, one thing you'll change on the walk? So I'll give you a second to do that. Oh, Jane, I always say I love when people say I haven't been bringing rewards. Not that I love it, but I love it because your dog should respond because you haven't been bringing them. So that's something new for your dog to focus on. Just a little hint, I would bring, if your dog eats food, cheese sticks, because those are a little bit more enticing than regular kibble or regular dog treats, or any type of smelly treat like salmon. A lot of times we're competing with the outside world. And so just to use regular treats, if you smell the bag and you're like, it's fine, then it's not going to be, and you can't compete with the outside world with that. But if you smell it and you pull your head back, you can compete with that. So I encourage you to get like salmon treats or anything that's stinky. If you don't, you can use cheese sticks or get a piece of cheese out the kitchen. Um, chicken as well, boiled chicken. Sometimes I use the Purdue chicken strips from Stop and Shop. Those work equally as well. So whatever's going to get your dog to focus on you, you want to use that. So Gold Molly is going to leave home calmer. I love that one. Maybe for me to stay calm. Yes, I always say if your dog's calm but you're not, maybe give it some time. Maybe go later because there's no sense of you going if you're already worked up, or maybe you had a bad day at work, or maybe a lot's going on. Just choose another time, or maybe you opt for in-home stuff like sniffing, because the purpose of the walk is really for the dog to sniff and kind of get outside, but mental stimulation will do the job as well. So if you don't feel like going on a walk, you can definitely do some sniffing. Yes. Okay. You used string cheese today and it worked. Absolutely. Sometimes just changing the treat works. Sometimes changing the walking path you going on are going on. Sometimes changing the walking path that you are walking on works as well. So again, it's going to be different for every dog. All right, moving on. And I'll give you okay. All right. We don't just teach dogs, we help families understand them. Notice, understand, respond, celebrate recovery. Recovery matters more than perfection. Okay. So I want to give everyone a chance to ask questions if you have them at this point. And I do want to go over one last time, just kind of putting everything together. Um, Preparing for the walks and things like that, just so it can all, fit. And then I'll open it up for chat, whether you want to unmute and talk or just type it in the chat box is fine. So on the very last, so go to slide um, 13 in the workbook, because that's definitely a page that you can utilize even after this. If to kind of figure out what your dog needs and what's going to be best. So, again, you always want to prepare for the walk. What do we need before leaving? Again, even this week, if you're going to focus on having a calmer walk and having your dog be calmer before the walk, what do you need before the walk? So, do you need your dog to go out in the backyard and sniff? Do you need to take 10 minutes to kind of zen a little bit? Do you need to bring treats? So you want to be prepared as much as possible for the walk. Second thing, notice, what will I watch for? And I want you to think outside of, oh, I'm going to watch for dogs or what they're triggered. Think about the time of day that you're walking and which you normally see. Is it something, are you going to watch for the dog that you see all the time? Are you going to go a different route? Because if you know what to watch for, that whole calling your dog's name, you want to keep on doing that as you go by, like another dog or another car, whatever your dog's triggered towards. When our dog reacts, it's not simple as, yes, we can cross the path just so we can create space, but we want to give them something else to do, and that's to focus on us. So now you can understand why we do that focus exercise with calling their name. So on the walk, maybe I call them a handful of times, but if I see another dog, I'm like, Francesca, Francesca, that's my dog. Frenchie, 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 back to back. Cause then they're like this, like, ooh, ooh, when I see a dog, good things happen. So I guess when I see a dog, I should just look to, what's going on, because that's way better. So that's how that works. It doesn't work overnight, but just being consistent and keeping that routine, your dog will start to understand. So definitely watch for what you normally see in their environment, but also the next thing is understanding what will your dog experience and what can I do early. Essentially, I jumped the gun on that one. And the next step is, how will I know my dog is reconnecting? Again, that's going to be different with the dogs I work with. Like I said, I teach them to look back at me. So a lot of times they'll look back. For most people who are crossing the street, you'll know because your dog just comes with you more easily than, that whole struggle back and forth. So you'll start to notice that your dog is reconnecting because things will seem a little bit more easy or doable. And the last thing you want to do is definitely celebrate the small wins. A lot of times we're waiting for the finale for our dog to do everything or to have like 10 perfect walks. But if you have a half of a perfect walk, or say your dog's calm before the walk, but the rest of the walk is not that great, praise yourself for that win in the beginning because you do need the motivation because a lot of times we're just so hard on ourselves and we want to be in that good mindset because remember our dogs definitely pick up on the things that we're feeling and it comes right down the leash. All right, so let me see if I have any questions. Okay. Okay, so Finn is a huge sniffer, doesn't generally notice other yes, people or dogs right away. Is it better to change directions before he notices or work on getting him to be calm when we do walk by other dogs? That okay. I'll stick to the easiest answer because I can go so many different directions with this. So, a dog who is focused on the ground and reactive, what I'll say is if obviously you're struggling with that now, it is not the worst thing for you to notice the dog first and for your dog to be searching on the ground. I actually love that one because now you can, okay, let's go and move the dog out the situation or further away before they notice. And hopefully by the time they notice, you're further away, or maybe you're in an area where you can start doing the treat. Sometimes I say, don't even walk, wait where you are and just do the treat thing with the dog until the other dog passes by. So it's not the worst thing. You don't have to have him look at the dog if we know he's going to react. I would focus on what can we do in that moment, whether it's moving away, going the opposite direction. I always say, do what's going to make you feel more comfortable, not what's more comfortable for your dog. Because at the end of the day, if your dog is comfortable and you're not, again, they're going to feel it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. The other thing you said you're not sure what's going on in his mind or what's bothering him. So, from my experience working with tons of dogs, yes, they definitely sniff. But if you have a dog who sniffs from the time they leave the house and they just never let up, usually they're trying to avoid something and they're just trying to get done with the walk. Not saying dogs cannot do that, but as a dog trainer, that signals to me that they're uncomfortable, maybe they're nervous, maybe they're stressed. One thing you can do is start to help him feel good about being on a walk. If you do have a dog that does take treats and start, calling his name and things like that. Um, but the other thing I would start to look at is are there any environments or scenarios where he doesn't sniff as much, or maybe he does give it a break and maybe start off there. Any other questions I can want want to understand why my dog barks, lunges at other dogs. What's going on? Oh, that's okay. So I thought it was the same question. Okay. Um, so dogs can bark and lunge for many reasons. By the time you notice your dog is barking or lunging, they've been trying to tell you a long time ago. I wish I had this handout that I give the families I work with that has illustrations of how it starts. But just to, before I get to that answer, how it starts is usually your dog stands still and there's no reaction. And usually we're like, it's okay, come on, it's not that bad. But in that moment, your dog's trying to tell you like something's off, right? But we keep on going. The next thing you might hear maybe a small like roof or a growl, but we're like, no, 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 it's okay. Let's go. And then the next thing, we hear, "Rah, rah, rah," and then we're like, oh my God, need to call a trainer. What's going on? But your dog's been trying to tell you when they stop, like they didn't like that. So if we're at the point now where our dog's reacting, our dogs can react for many reasons. They can react to other dogs, they can react to other people's, they can react to other noises. And so you definitely want to look at what's around you and see can you identify what's going on in an environment which my dog is reacting. I have a really good one that I recorded today. Let me tell you this one. So I was working with a dog or at Bird Park for those who are local, and the dog's reactive, and the dog's been doing so good with the mom. And so we was walking, and the trail, and one dog walked by, was 15 feet away. At this point, I don't call her name because we've been working together long, and she just sat and looked. I'm like, good job, right? Two dogs walked by, and next you know, she was like, "Rrr," like that, right? And so you might be thinking, oh, Pam, why did she do that? I thought she was good with dogs. And so I thought to myself, like, what was that about? Two dogs instead of one. So sometimes it could be just as simple as that. Or it can be a kid ran up to him. Like my dog loves people. Like, why did they react? Well, a kid can be very impulsive. So sometimes it's the small things. And I always say you can't fault yourself because you're not a trainer, that you may not see that is triggering your dog. So just keep that in mind as well. Um, one of my dogs sits and focuses on oncoming dogs and waits. Yep, and does the little she. Yep, curious when they are far away, but will get more worked up if they get close. Okay. So I've worked with dogs like that, and but also want to reward her for being calm for a distance. Yep. So dogs who sit and wait, if you know your dog's gonna, lunge and stuff like that, I would work on moving them away and making that's the skill or thing that you're gonna teach your dog right now. It's like, hey, because if we sit, we know the dog's gonna lunge as the other dog comes closer. So we don't want to wait for that to happen. We want to be proactive. So whether that means moving your dog away or, while your dog's sitting there, maybe give them two treats, but then, okay, this way, come with me and give them treats for coming with you. And that way it's a win-win situation. But if we know our dog's going to respond, we just want to go in the opposite direction and move them out that situation. If you're in that situation and you can't, there's times where you can't go in either direction. I always say you just want to stay where you are, do the two-hand hold. If you know your dog's going to react, don't try to go anywhere and just wait till that moment passes. A lot of times we're still trying to do this and we're not going to get anywhere at that time. So if you can't get out of the situation, you just wait it out. Um, okay. Any other questions? Just wondering. Okay. We answered that. I hope that answered that for you, Susan. Okay. Any last questions before we wrap up? Okay. So I hope this workshop gave you some insight into how your dog, why your dog's reacting, and what's really behind it, and just those simple things that you can do every day with or without training. Um, as always, I always want you to understand the why behind it. If you are local, I will be holding an in-person workshop. So I can facilitate and walk you through how to apply this live in the flesh. So if you're interested in that, everyone should be getting an email either way. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always available by email. If you're interested in training and you're not local, I do provide virtual training. Yes, we can do reactivity online. So that is a thing thanks to COVID. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Jane. But other than that, if there aren't any other questions, I'll let everyone go and I will hopefully see you guys around for the next workshop. You're welcome, Rhonda. All right. Good night, everyone.